It's a great day. Welcome to That's Great IT, your one-stop place to learn about IT ops by turning IT noise into insights and manual tasks into automated actions, powered by BigPanda. I'm your host, Craig Ferrara. Join me as I talk to tech experts and people from different walks of life, sharing great insights, the latest trends, and relevant topics about IT ops and AIOps. This is That's Great IT, powered by BigPanda. All right, so our guest today is Vinod Subramanian. He is the Chief Data and Product Development Officer at Syapse. So Vinod, thank you so much for being with us today.
Craig, first of all, thank you for having me. Great to be here. My name is Vinod Subramanian. I'm the Chief Data and Product Development Officer at Syapse, as Craig mentioned. In my role, I'm responsible for the company's data, product, engineering, cloud operations, technology, aka IT, and information security function. Syapse is a real-world evidence company dedicated to extinguishing the fear and the burden of serious disease by advancing real-world care. Our mission is to support precision cancer care worldwide, and we apply innovative technologies that can enhance our industry-leading data ingestion and analytic capabilities to drive impact for patients with cancer. There's a patient benefiting from all our work, and there is a patient behind every data we interact. Having a people-first approach to applying technology and humanizing the work is where we start from.
No, that's a great point. And when we're talking about the proliferation of data and managing data and the systems behind just about everything related to healthcare, by the way, very relevant topic for us, we'll say within the last several years. I think healthcare has been front of mind for just about every person on the planet, especially as COVID-19 has not only emerged, but also become part of our daily life. More and more technology is going into the fight against COVID, research and development against cancers, other diseases, and just about everything that has to do with the operations behind pharmaceuticals, hospitals, day-to-day lives. So IT becomes incredibly center to that conversation, and a lot of the technology that goes into providing IT, AIOps, and things like that for the healthcare and research industry. Perfectly relevant topic for us today. So, Vinod, what I wanted to start with here is to talk a little bit about that in particular, which is the changing landscape of healthcare, whether it be for the pandemic or accelerated development for vaccines or how we're doing research. Tell me a little bit about just how healthcare has changed and how the rise of technology, data management, and IT has played a role in that.
Yeah, great question, Craig. I think you highlighted it very nicely, right? When you talked about technology, which is core to everything that we do today and an enabler. And the interesting shift I see in how it is in the past 3 years and how it was in the past 10 years before 2020 is quite stark. We all know that healthcare is a highly regulated industry, especially in the United States and across the world for the right reasons. As such, the innovation and changes that takes place, it takes time to permeate through the system to benefit patients and the stakeholders. This is also an industry that has traditionally been risk averse in many ways. And when it came to technology and IT, there was always that lag in many ways. But the last 2 years have left an indelible mark on all of us, from changes to how we live to our perspective of the world. For those in healthcare, this has been doubly true for all the things that we've faced, right? In once in a generation challenge to how we conceptualize, how we innovate and deliver care for others. Advancing care is a journey. It doesn't just happen overnight. The experience of COVID-19 accelerated long needed changes in how we operate, how we advance the use of technologies, forcing collaboration across the stakeholders, not just within few entities, including technology companies like yours and ours, and giving data and IT a central role in care innovation and delivery. That has been the significant change in the 2.5 years and 3 years. Now, healthcare data management in the past, where it was all about storing data, has evolved into data science, putting data into action, not just about one patient, but for everyone. And as data took a central and integral role, so did IT and technology. It is also up to companies like ours in a big way for us to foster the best possible version of the future of health. And one where lessons learned on a daily basis, whether it's through interactions, new treatments, better care, and healthier people, starts with IT today. And I think that has been a significant change in the past 3 years.
For those of us who are on the receiving end of healthcare, you always kind of think about the face of the care that you're providing or receiving, I should say, is the doctor, is the nurse. It is the drugs and the medicine that you consume. But there's been a shift in the spotlight as to how all of these things are produced. And there's always this conversation around, okay, I now manage my patient files online. I have an application now that wherever I receive my healthcare, my data is now made available to my healthcare provider. I know what my prescription is because I look it up on my phone rather than I'm holding a piece of paper that was signed by my doctor. And so the ever-present computer that we hold in our hand that we make phone calls on from time to time, things like that, these things become hugely important. Let me ask you this very straightforward question. What is the potential impact to outages or degradations to some of these supporting technologies to, say, the research that you're supporting at Syapse or things like that? What are the stakes here that we're talking about when it comes to the IT operations behind the technology?
Yeah, great question, Craig. We talked about it briefly earlier, right? IT plays a big role in instrumenting this compelling future of what we live in today. Access to quality care for right people at the right time starts with availability of the service and the usability of the service. When I try to schedule an appointment, as simple as that, if the system that I'm trying to schedule today is not available, I cannot even see the doctor. Consistency, reliability, user experience are not just IT concepts anymore. They are actually core principles for business today, especially in healthcare. Patient care is complicated. As such, going back to the question you talked about, it is not just some data point sitting in paper. It has to be available in a minute's notice or even sometimes in seconds to a care provider for that particular patient for all the things that has happened till that point in time. So that way it can benefit the patient in terms of the interaction and outcomes. So as such, IT today enables professionals to make life-changing decisions faster. That's the beauty of technology. Now, I'm sure you heard this concept, right? Access, predictability, reliability. How does that even tie back to a service and an experience? Collecting the state of basic services few years ago, right? For example, healthcare appointments, virtual interactions with care teams, medication delivered to your doorsteps were unimaginable. And of course, there were too many restrictions. Today, just in the past 3 years, right, that is a norm. The way you schedule your appointment, you don't pick up the phone and call someone, you do it through your smartphone. For most people across the country, the access where you could get to a care professional was within a clinic or a hospital system within the building. Today, you can do telehealth. Today, there are mobile clinics that could very well come close to you. And that was unimaginable 3 years ago. For that, technology plays a big role to find the right person, to provide the right care, to understand what the person is going through. And that is an important piece, which means the people who are providing care, they are able to put patients first over paperwork. And that is what technology is instrumenting. Access to services through any devices has become a norm and expected. Predictability in service and user experience has improved significantly. And it's a high degree of dependency on IT service management. If you think about what IT service management is, incident management, change management, problem management, release management, these are all things that only IT spoke. Now, everyone in the business is well aware of it because that's part and parcel of how you deliver service and what your experience is for your user. Now, not everybody, including an end user, thinks about it, but this has become part of every business. The most important thing, 5 years ago, I still remember, if I talk about mean time between failures and mean time to recover, I would get scarce. Today, reliability of a service, any SaaS service, is highly connected with mean time between failures and mean time to recover. The price of reliability in the world today is a pursuit of utmost simplicity. That has to be the care. And it ties back to your mean time between failures and mean time between to recover, because you understand how you're serving and you constantly evolve. Tools become a big factor because it connects all the logs. It brings all the interactions from user experience all the way down to how your cloud infrastructure behaves and tells you very concrete information which is correlated to be able to make meaningful actions. That's where your AI today in IT tools play a big role, because specificity, it's not just for leadership. Specificity is also for IT. And I think that's the beauty of what things have changed in the past 4 years.
Let's break that down a little bit, because I think what's probably going to be really, really interesting for our listeners here is to talk a little bit about, specifically in the landscape of healthcare, there's many ways to build an IT operations team and support an organization, right? And there's many different types of healthcare organizations where different models might make sense in one area versus another. But Vinod, let's talk specifically about the products that you're supporting and your preferred IT operating model. And be as theoretical as you like. If we were talking about, if I were a pharma company, if I were specifically in data management, analysis, business intelligence, data science, what would be your preferred IT operating model? Tell us a little bit about the type of business you'd be supporting and why you would choose a specific model to support it.
Yeah, let me start with the why, and then I'll go into the what, and then the different personas that we typically support at Syapse, right? That serve as a good stage. Now, affordable healthcare in US and also across the world is still a dream. The opportunity to leverage technology and data to address challenging healthcare problems has been a compelling reason. That's one of the reasons why my role and the role I took in the industry was very relevant for me. It also allowed me to nurture my desire to help others while earning a living. Of course, right? We all love that.
Absolutely.
There are very few professions where, especially when it comes to technology, where you can touch the lives of others and make a difference in them, the way you can do it in healthcare industry. That has been very meaningful. Within the industry, right, you have the payers, you have the providers, you have life science, you have health systems, you have patients like you and me. But if you connect all that to technology, right, let's start at the highest level. IT operations was broadly used where it covers everything starting from your email system, to your servers, to your compute, to your storage, to information security, to your applications and the user experience. In the past decade, the IT operations has been broken down into DevOps, DevSecOps, Data Ops, ML Ops, AI Ops, right, in its own specialization. Irrespective of the focus area, the core of it starts with the premise that hope is not a strategy. You have to have a mindset to work yourself out of what you're doing today, so that way it is automatic and not just automate. It's a journey, right? You got to start somewhere and you have to focus not just on perfection. The personas that we support health systems that are care providers for patients. We support life science companies that are looking to find ways to understand the patient journey and to understand how they can deliver better therapies, improve testing, more importantly, early drug development and detection, so that way they can find cure and not just be reactive band-aids. For that, it is about, again, finding the right information for the particular persona, whether it's a data scientist or a researcher or a physician, to be able to get the information so that they're constantly learning and evolving. IT plays a very key role, especially it has come to the forefront as a result of the vaccine production and innovation just in the span of 18 months. And it is driving an age of consciousness beyond knowledge, to be fair. And the way it is going about doing it is understanding the bare of how it comes together. For example, IT today is a backbone for all your services. How does the backbone get created? You're thinking about the user in mind. You're thinking about what are they going to do on a day-to-day basis. And then you're recreating that user experience in a way where their quality of life gets better. When you think about that, you think about many aspects of the service. You think about observability. You think about deploying features quickly. You think about reliability. You think about capacity. And I call it the 8 to thrive. When you think about that, you essentially have to start with the point of view where technology is best when it brings people together. That's what I always think about. I think about the fundamental shift, what the COVID has brought in the workplace to ensure that the long-term employee productivity and retention is focused, because employees create innovation. And when you put them in the right place and you enable them to take it forward in a way where it helps their customers, you automatically create innovation and drive it. So if you think about it, fast forward, IT is an integral part of the company culture. That is part of our company culture today. It's not a second best option that gets leveraged all the time. We can imagine a future and work towards it because observability in what we do in our technology has become a core. Fixes and enhancements to what we do today, whether it's customer features, are developed, tested, deployed in hours. Developer velocity, it's an important aspect. Something that 5-6 years ago, we wouldn't even think about it because we would always think about features. Now we think about how to get the features, not just out, but how to learn from it, how to sustain it, and how to fix it so that the patient who's in the center of all this is constantly getting the best care. And for that, we need to support the care team with a great experience so that way they can use the tools, whether it's through mobile devices, iPad, whether it's desktop devices or laptop, they can get to that so that way they focus on the patient. Imagine a business, right? The business is growing constantly. The typical mindset comes where when your business is growing, your infrastructure expenses are growing. But today, the IT tools, I was looking through BigPanda, is a great example where it doesn't have to, where in real time, you can instrument information in a way where you can see how your compute and capacity is being consumed. You can introduce efficiencies through elasticity and cloud-aware services, and you can automatically reduce your operating expenses, creating an investment stream for innovation that will scale your business. That's what we do today. We are in Amazon, and one of the things that we constantly look for is, as we are growing, in the past 3 years, our growth has been significant. How do we make sure that we have efficiencies gained and we don't just blindly open the tap and just forget about it? We got to constantly learn from it. We have to think about how we are measuring ourselves. We have to connect all the events that happens, whether it's user interaction, whether it's features going in, whether it's integration between services, whether it's external integration, whether it's internal integration. All that does matter, right? In the past, we used to find issues after the customer reports. Today, thanks to advancement in event correlation, especially with the way AI is able to instrument all those logs together, data from different parts of the platform, customer interactions is just a norm. It's expected. And the way you think about experience, the way you think about service performance, the way you think about service availability and information security is something that is totally integrated. Without that, you can't take anything forward. Humans create innovation. So as such, you have to think about technology bound to have issues. And how do you have the ability to identify issues? How do you have the ability to fix them quickly without having an interruption and a disruption to a service is actually core to what you do from the real world care point of view.
Right. We're all trying to transition into proactive handling of incidents, even before there is an impact that is noticed by care providers, by patients. We have the observability to understand what's happening. We have monitoring across different systems where if there's an underlying problem with infrastructure, we can see what's happening with the services that are layered on top of that infrastructure. And we can get to the point where we're now bundling incidents by potential root cause, even if it's affecting tens or even hundreds of different systems. My question to you is, how do you staff for that? At this point, most companies don't have runbook automation in place where even the simplest of incidents, whether it be rebooting an access point, scaling out server capacity, or pinging another system just to get a status check as part of a larger triage initiative for a major incident. These things don't happen automatically for many companies or most companies. So how are we staffing if humans are still at the core of all of this new instrumentation and technology that's in place?
Yeah, I think there's something that you mentioned about the staffing aspects on how you have individuals in the forefront of reliability. It resonates a lot in many things that the industry has transformed. Because if you think about it, if there is humans involved in the loop, let's assume that it's changes or even availability, there is a guarantee that there is going to be some manual step involved where due to inattention, you're going to result in deacceleration and you're going to have other challenges. 70% of the outages happen as a result of humans, right? Whether it's in the form of mistakes, whether it's in the form of manuality. The staffing aspects is something that companies have to think about, because if you don't think about it to scale, things don't happen overnight. I'll tell you from my experience, in the past 10 years, one of the things that it's the first, I think about it as 8 to thrive in terms of principles. People comes first. You have to have intentionality in terms of focusing on how are you going to get IT organized so that way they are not only supporting the operations aspects of it, they are also supporting the engineering and innovation aspect of it, because IT is best served when they are proactive rather than being reactive. And for that, the incident management is a great example. It conceptualized a lot of things that is very strategic in nature, even though it's a service management concept. Think about it. Incident management typically happens in a reactive way and a proactive way. A reactive way, as in somebody tells you something has gone wrong, and then you start digging into the issue, you declare an incident, you have to stop the bleeding in terms of service disruptions, you have to restore the service, you have to preserve the logs, you have to communicate, do root cause analysis. That's an old way of doing it, because if you are going to go through that, there's a high likelihood you're going to be out of business today. Now, the new way of doing it, and it's almost a norm today, is before something happens, the instrumentation is automatically allowing you to correlate all those logs and bring it together in a way where you can take action. Now, who does that? It is essentially the IT staff that is looking at that and say, I have put a design in place, and the design is going to enable the organization to be able to take action automatically and not having to have manual intervention. So you got to staff it right. So in my world, the front line is the service reliability engineers. They actually look at the world, and their view of the world is always driven by three things: reliability, availability, and most importantly, accessibility. And I think this is what they live by on a regular basis. And the second order is the cloud engineers and the developers. They live the world a little differently because they're looking at it from an experience point of view. And their world is all about observability and understanding, and in a way where they want to essentially get to the point where they want to make their customers in a way where their quality of life is getting better on a daily basis. The third order, if you think about it, is all the product managers who want to make sure that the adoption is driven, who want to make sure that they understand their personas who are using the product. They want to learn from the usage, and they want to incorporate that back into the product in a way where we are making it better. Now, all these three has to come together. It starts with the people. You have to have the right people at the right place, and it takes time for the organization to gel, and this has to be part of your culture. And once you put all that together, the 8 principles, right, I referred earlier, to me, the 8 principles are: a system should be in a way where it meets the expectations of your user. How do you know the expectations of your user? You got to react, you got to interact with them, and you got to earn their trust. The second one is that the monitoring system cannot decide your reliability. The users that are using your product has to. So you got to match the expectation with what your ground reality is. The third one, in my view, is that the pursuit of ever increasing reliability, you have to think about always, what can I do better? And for that, you have to think about it, get the right people to think about an instrument and create automation one step at a time. And it doesn't happen overnight. So you got to take time and invest in it. The fourth one is diversity is great for people operations. Diversity is not great for technology and services. Because if you have many products out there, many tools out there in an organization, the event correlation is a nightmare. And you need to have consistency in what you're doing, and you need to have a why behind why you're using certain products and what outcomes you want to accomplish. The fifth one, in my view, is the most important one, where agility and stability is something that you got to be part of the technology. And this is something that developers and service reliability engineers constantly think about. And then, of course, capacity planning, change management, the most important thing. And the last and the most important is metrics. How do you measure your metrics? Are you going to think about the 90th percentile, or you're going to think about the 50th percentile, which is the average, right? AIOps, latency, throughput, and storage, and how do you bring it together? So this is what I would think about, right? I would just summarizing back your question. I would always have an organization that is focused on service reliability, that is on the front line, along with your support organization. The developers and our cloud engineers form the middle part of the organization, where they're constantly learning from service reliability engineers, learning from the customers, and they're looking at how to accelerate feature development and enhancements. And then the product managers and the data scientists who are constantly looking at the data from a usage point of view, and then they're thinking about what's next. How do we get there, and how do we improve the quality of care?
I think you and I are very like-minded when it comes to the kind of ideal makeup of how to staff an IT operations organization. And, we just, when I'm talking about this model, I tend to use different language, but we're describing the same thing. I like a tier 1 resource that is multidisciplinary, who is there to receive the incidents as they're coming in, regardless of discipline. They can be there to look at the totality of an alert storm that's coming in across an organization and help to understand, is this bundled correctly? Where does root cause lie? Do I have the knowledge base articles or the run books available to me to solve this as quickly as possible as the first line of defense? Or do I need subject matter experts as my tier 2 resources, whether this be my cloud operations team, our DevOps team, service and application owners, and things like that. And then as we're doing all of this work, you're going to need to have governance in place for problem management, post-incident review, change management, as we're starting to identify the root causes of issues and why things are, as you mentioned, 70% of these issues are human caused. A lot of times that's rooted in changes. But then also taking a data-driven approach to what you do to process, looking at the KPIs and the metrics that are coming out of these things to do things like identify where most of our work is coming from. IT operators, work is defined as the issues that you face. If you're looking at, we handle 3,000 hours worth of work on a monthly basis, well, you've probably got a sizable team that's handling a lot of incidents within your organization. But where is that work coming from? What's the standard priority of the work that we're seeing? What's happening to the work that we receive when it comes in? Is my team able to resolve it? Or am I escalating the majority of these issues in a certain category? And can we reduce that? Is there a way that that can become more actionable for my team so that these subject matter experts, these resources that might exist as a tier 2 resource internally, how do we shield them from having to do all of this work that potentially my tier 1 resource team can handle, the service reliability engineering team? That makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm curious, where do you think most companies are in realizing a model like that? And what are some of the challenges that they're facing getting there?
Yeah, you'll be surprised, Craig. I think you summarized it very well, right? In terms of making sure that different folks in the same company are focused on different things so that way not everybody is focused on the one thing, intake or frontline or future, right? You got to look at different workloads to be able to deliver value constantly and consistently. That's the reason why you need to staff it in a way where it's elevating the organization and your customers and what you're doing as a business. And as you mentioned, questions are a great way to influence the mindset to create impact. There's no different in IT. And absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, right? Even correlation, I could go back to that, is a beautiful way of identifying challenges and identifying where we need to go to based on the past. And instrument based on patterns, a beautiful strategy that can help us to deliver awesome service. Now, what companies are doing today, interestingly, if you would ask me the same question 5 years ago, I would have said it's a journey. But today, service reliability engineering is a norm. Cloud engineering and DevOps is a standard, which has been broadly adopted across the industry. And I was working almost, I would say, 20 years ago. I was at WebEx, and WebEx and Salesforce was the one that introduced this concept of service reliability engineering at that time because they were the first in the market with SaaS. It was a very foreign concept. And today it is not anymore. It is a standard part of every company, and they're not part of IT. Interestingly, they're part of business operations, where your service reliability engineering, DevOps, and also the core aspects of how you instrument information security, they're all embedded within the business where along with the product managers, they have a very consistent view of it. And it's actually evolving to the next level. And I'm sure in the near future, I won't be surprised if it is all combined into a data oriented roles where you have instrumentation in terms of data ops, you have ML ops, you have specific AI ops, all getting rolled under a view that is quite elevating in any way, again, based on specificity. I think that's the beauty of it, where I see experimentation everywhere. And I think that is something that another piece that is impacted in the 3 years where negative results are magic today. 3 years ago, I would say it's been dealt with some skepticism. But given this remote first concept and the willingness to experiment, the value of experimentation is giving negative results quite an important place because it's conclusive. It informs the future work. It cannot be ignored or discounted. And it actually elevates company in many ways because it is allowing them to take a step back to say, can I do better? Because if you ask your questions are a great way to influence mind. But if you ask those questions saying, where are my bottlenecks? If there are bottlenecks, is it design? Is it capacity? Is it bandwidth? How are the service components working together? Are microservices really getting what I need to as an outcome? How do I provide great service for my customers and how do I know about that? And what are the requirements for my system and product for scaling? And do I even understand what loss means? How do I keep state and consistently keep state? You and I are right now in a Zoom meeting. And you could have an issue with your laptop. I could have an issue with my laptop. It could be a browser. It could be an internet connection. But for various reasons, right, even though they're all happening around us, there is a consistency in how you and I are interacting today. I'm almost able to see your body language in real time. And that is thanks to IT that is working behind it, because it's instrumenting and it's enabling people who are in the front line supporting this service today from an operations point of view, and engineers who are learning from our experience, right, and learning, looking at the log and making improvements consistently and improving the user experience is what got us to this Zoom experience. And I think that's where I see the market evolving in a big way, where there is significant value given for IT, which was a back-end service, to being a seat at the table where they are looked upon as enablers. And all IT services in my organization, I'm responsible for product, data, engineering, technology, and information security. Information security and technology is not something that we think as an afterthought. They are at the table thinking about business requirements, thinking about user requirements and user experience. And they think about it from their point of view. And together, we get to a solution moving forward. And that's how we've allowed us to innovate rapidly in the past 3 years and support the business growth.
That makes a ton of sense to me. And I think the more that we can start to take a holistic view of, you kind of start at the end. You're working in reverse. We are supporting an experience. We are supporting the availability, in this case, of healthcare and healthcare related services to a patient, to the doctors, to the staff, to the researchers, to the manufacturers, to the supply chain that's moving these things around the country. If we look at availability to start with, and then we instrument and we staff ourselves in a way that we can actually support that availability goal, and we can back it up with data to understand exactly where we need to make improvements to not only system stability, but also to our own process to make sure that we are more agile and effective at supporting these services in near real time. I think we can get to the point where we are considering ourselves a modern and proactive IT operations organization. So just with some closing thoughts here from you, Vinod, what are some of the key takeaways today? If you wanted to just say, hey, the changing landscape of healthcare is centered around IT. What are some of the key takeaways for our listeners that have tuned in for us? And we've talked about kind of a lot of things here. What would you summarize for everyone?
The key takeaway, in my view, are the 8 principles that I would definitely want everybody to think about and consider. We all do that in different ways. Thinking about capacity, thinking about reliability, thinking about agility, stability, is not just IT concepts. It's core to what we do as a company, as a business today, and as an organization that is delivering service. And it's an important aspect of what we do, right? We just need to be aware of that. And we need to make sure that that's part of the business. We have the strongest labor market of our lifetime. The world is producing fascinating wonders, right? Whether it's self-driving cars or total knowledge in that fingertips. And more importantly, what has happened with the COVID vaccine, the accelerator that we call COVID, has enabled us to innovate, partner with customers, and collaborate with companies to deliver value for our customers and elevate them due to technology. The greatest customer experience begins with the ability for us to take advantage of IT and applying it to serve people. And to serve people, you got to understand where they're coming from, the important why. And once you understand why and the experience, modernizing using IT and delivering amazing service, which is compelling, is actually easy. And it takes us to a point where the world's biggest problems are biggest opportunities, of course, because of technology today.
Vinod Subramanian, I want to say thank you. Chief Data and Product Development Officer at Syapse. Thank you so much for being with us today. Your insights are not only interesting, but I think it sets a nice tone for whether you're in healthcare or you're in any other industry, but working in IT operations. We put the people and the services that we are supporting first. And I just want to say thanks again for providing your insights, some of your opinions around the operating model. Just so happens we were in agreement. There could have been quite the argument there. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Craig. This was such a delight. Love the energy and thrilled to be here.
That was great. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been That's Great IT, your one-stop place to learn about IT ops and AI ops, powered by BigPanda. Catch us on our next episode.